You wake up each morning to the same routine, walk the same paths, see the same faces, and somewhere deep inside, you feel like you're sleepwalking through a world that has lost all its magic. You look around and everything seems ordinary, flat, empty of meaning. The sunset that once moved you to tears now barely catches your attention as you scroll through your phone. The cathedral you pass on your way to work has become just another building. The moment of silence in your childhood bedroom where you once felt an inexplicable presence now feels like nothing more than an empty room filled with old furniture. You're not going crazy, and you're not alone in this feeling. What you're experiencing is what happens when we lose our capacity to perceive the sacred breaking through into our everyday world. But what if I told you that the sacred has never actually left? What if the very emptiness you feel is actually your soul crying out for something that has been there all along, waiting for you to remember how to see it again? There was a time, not so long ago in the grand scale of human history, when people lived in a world alive with meaning. Every tree could be a dwelling place for spirits. Every stone could mark a sacred boundary. Every river could carry the voice of the divine. They understood something we have almost completely forgotten in our rush toward modernity, that the sacred doesn't exist in some distant realm separated from our daily lives, but rather breaks through into our ordinary world in moments of recognition that can transform everything. This breaking through, this sudden manifestation of the sacred in the midst of the profane, is what the great scholar of religion, Mircea Eliade, called hierophany. It's a word that comes from the Greek meaning the manifestation or appearance of the sacred, and understanding this concept might just change the way you see every single moment of your existence. Imagine you're walking through a forest, perhaps feeling disconnected and heavy with the weight of modern life, when suddenly you come upon a clearing where the light falls in such a way that everything seems to pulse with a presence beyond itself. The trees are no longer just trees, the ground beneath your feet is no longer just earth, and you are no longer just a person taking a walk. In that moment, you have encountered a hierophany, and through this encounter, the entire forest has become sacred space. This is not about believing in any particular religion or subscribing to any specific doctrine. This is about recognizing a fundamental aspect of human experience that transcends cultural boundaries and speaks to something universal in our nature as beings capable of perceiving meaning. Eliade spent his entire career studying how different cultures throughout history have experienced and understood these manifestations of the sacred, and what he discovered was profound. Whether we're talking about the Aboriginal Australians' relationship with sacred sites, the ancient Greeks' understanding of certain groves as dwelling places of gods, or the way a simple stone becomes a sacred object when it marks the place where someone experienced the divine, all of these point to the same fundamental truth. The sacred doesn't require special buildings or elaborate rituals to manifest itself. It breaks through wherever and whenever human consciousness opens itself to receive it. The key is learning to recognize these moments and understand their significance not just as interesting psychological experiences, but as genuine encounters with dimensions of reality that our materialistic worldview has taught us to dismiss or ignore. You know what touches me most when I read your messages? It's realizing that we're not alone in this search. If you're listening to me now and feel that emptiness, that sensation that something important is missing in your life, I want you to know that I understand exactly what you're going through. There were moments when I also felt completely disconnected from the sacred, lost in the midst of a routine that seemed to suck all the magic out of existence. That's why I want to ask you a very direct question. What was the last moment you felt there was something greater than yourself present in your life? It could have been contemplating a sunset, listening to music, or simply in an instant of silence. If you feel comfortable, write in the comments, "I miss the sacred in my daily life," and briefly tell when that last moment was. Your story might be exactly what someone needs to read today to feel less alone in this journey. And I promise I'll read each comment with the care it deserves. But let's go deeper into understanding what makes hierophany such a revolutionary concept for modern people struggling to find meaning. When Eliade studied the religious experiences of traditional peoples, he noticed that they made a crucial distinction between two kinds of time and space, the sacred and the profane. Profane time is the time of clocks and calendars, the endless succession of moments that feel empty and mechanical. Profane space is the space of measurements and coordinates, where one location is essentially the same as any other. But sacred time and sacred space operate according to completely different principles. Sacred time is the time of beginnings, of creation, of moments that matter so much they seem to exist outside of ordinary duration. Sacred space is space that has been marked, transformed, made meaningful through encounter with the sacred. And here's the crucial insight. Hierophany is what creates this transformation. It's the moment when profane time becomes sacred time, when ordinary space becomes sacred space, and when an individual human life touches something eternal and infinite. Think about the last time you visited a place that felt sacred to you. Maybe it was a childhood home. Maybe it was a natural setting that took your breath away. Maybe it was an old church or temple that seemed to hold centuries of prayer within its walls. What made that place different from a parking lot or a shopping mall? It wasn't the physical materials, the stones or wood or architecture. It was the fact that this place had been marked by hierophany, either your own personal encounter with the sacred or the accumulated encounters of countless others who had recognized something sacred breaking through in that particular location. This is why pilgrimage sites around the world continue to draw millions of people, even in our supposedly secular age. People instinctively understand that certain places have been transformed by sacred encounter, and they travel great distances hoping to experience that transformation for themselves. Now, if you're someone who has been conditioned to think of yourself as rational and scientific, you might be wondering whether any of this is real or just wishful thinking, just psychological projection onto a meaningless universe. And this is where Eliade's insights become particularly important for our time. He wasn't interested in proving or disproving the objective existence of the sacred in some theological sense. What he was documenting was a fundamental structure of human consciousness, a way that human beings naturally organize their experience of reality when they aren't being told that such experiences are invalid or meaningless. He showed that the capacity to perceive hierophany is not the result of primitive superstition that educated people should outgrow, but rather a sophisticated and essential aspect of what it means to be fully human. Consider this. When you fall in love, when you hold your newborn child for the first time, when you experience a work of art that moves you to tears, when you witness an act of profound courage or compassion, what's happening to you? The materialist worldview would say that these are just chemical reactions in your brain, evolutionary responses that helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. But your lived experience tells you something entirely different. Your lived experience tells you that in these moments, you are encountering something that transcends the merely physical, something that reveals deeper dimensions of reality than what can be measured or quantified. These are hierophanies, manifestations of the sacred breaking through into your ordinary world and transforming it into something infinitely meaningful. And here's where this understanding becomes practical and life-changing. Once you begin to recognize hierophany as a real and recurring feature of human experience, you start to see that the sacred is not something you need to travel to find, not something that requires special credentials or elaborate preparations to encounter. The sacred is constantly offering itself to you, breaking through into your daily life in ways both subtle and dramatic, waiting for you to develop the eyes to see and the heart to receive what's being offered. That morning light streaming through your bedroom window, the way your partner looks when they're sleeping peacefully beside you, the sound of rain against the roof on a quiet evening, the face of a stranger who shows you unexpected kindness, the moment when you realize you've forgiven someone who hurt you deeply. These are not just nice experiences or poetic metaphors. These are genuine manifestations of the sacred hierophanies that can serve as doorways into a completely different way of living and being in the world. But recognizing hierophany is only the beginning. What Eliade discovered in his studies is that traditional peoples didn't just passively experience these manifestations of the sacred, they actively cultivated their capacity to perceive them and developed sophisticated practices for maintaining their connection to the sacred dimension of reality. They understood that living in constant awareness of the sacred requires intention, requires what we might call spiritual discipline, though not necessarily in any dogmatic or institutionalized sense. It requires learning to slow down enough to notice what's actually happening around you and within you. It requires developing a quality of attention that can penetrate beneath the surface of things to perceive the deeper currents of meaning that are always flowing through your experience. This is why meditation practices exist in every wisdom tradition, why prayer is universal among human cultures, why art and music and poetry have always been considered sacred activities. These are technologies of consciousness, methods for cultivating your natural capacity to perceive and receive hierophany. And the beautiful thing is that you don't need to become a monk or join an ashram to begin developing this capacity. You can start right where you are, with whatever circumstances currently surround your life. The sacred is not waiting for you to become someone different or to find yourself in some exotic location. The sacred is waiting for you to become present to what's already here, to develop the kind of deep attention that can recognize the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. Let me share something that might help you begin to understand this more concretely. Eliade noticed that in traditional cultures people had specific practices for marking the transitions between sacred and profane consciousness. When they entered a sacred space, they didn't just walk in casually the way we might enter a store or office building. They prepared themselves. They acknowledged that they were crossing a threshold. They opened themselves to encounter something beyond the ordinary. And when they left sacred space, they didn't just resume their regular activities without acknowledgement. They carried something of the sacred back into their daily lives, allowing the hierophany they had experienced to transform their ordinary consciousness and actions. You can develop similar practices in your own life without subscribing to any particular religious tradition. When you wake up in the morning, instead of immediately reaching for your phone or jumping into the day's tasks, you can take a few moments to consciously cross the threshold between sleep and waking, acknowledging that you're entering a new day full of potential for sacred encounter. When you eat, you can pause to appreciate not just the flavors and textures of your food, but the miracle of nourishment, the way sunlight and soil and rain have combined to create what sustains your life. When you interact with other people, you can practice seeing them not just as obstacles or resources or sources of entertainment, but as fellow beings carrying their own spark of the sacred, their own capacity for depth and meaning and transformation. These might seem like small things, but Eliade would tell you that the sacred often manifests through the small and seemingly insignificant. A single moment of genuine presence, of real attention, of openness to what's beyond the surface can become a hierophany that illuminates everything else in your life. The mother who truly sees her child's face, the friend who really listens when you're struggling, the stranger who offers help without expecting anything in return, the instant when you realize that you are part of something much larger and more beautiful than your individual concerns and worries. These are not rare mystical experiences reserved for saints and sages. These are the ordinary miracles available to anyone willing to cultivate the consciousness necessary to perceive them. And this brings us to one of Eliade's most important insights about modern life, and why so many of us feel spiritually disconnected and existentially empty. He distinguished between what he called homo religiosus, religious or sacred man, and modern secular consciousness. The difference isn't that one believes in God and the other doesn't, or that one follows religious practices and the other doesn't. The difference is that homo religiosus lives in a universe where sacred and profane intermingle, where meaning and transcendence are woven into the fabric of daily existence, while modern secular consciousness tries to live in a universe where only the profane exists, where everything can be reduced to material causes and effects, where there's no room for mystery or transcendence or genuine meaning. But here's what Eliade discovered, and what offers hope for all of us struggling with the flatness and emptiness of purely secular existence. Homo religiosus isn't dead in modern people. It's been suppressed, ignored, dismissed as primitive or irrational, but it's still there waiting to be reactivated. This is why people who consider themselves completely secular still get chills when they hear certain pieces of music, still feel moved by natural beauty, still experience moments of profound connection with other people, still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night with a sense that there's something important they're supposed to be doing with their lives. These are expressions of your inner homo religiosus, trying to break through the barriers that modern conditioning has erected against sacred experience. You don't have to choose between being rational and being open to the sacred. In fact, true rationality requires acknowledging the full spectrum of human experience, including those aspects that can't be quantified or explained through purely material causation. What Eliade offers us is a way of understanding sacred experience that doesn't require abandoning critical thinking or embracing superstition. He shows us that the capacity to perceive hierophany is a fundamental feature of human consciousness, as natural and important as our capacity for logical reasoning or artistic creation. And he shows us that cultivating this capacity isn't about escaping from the world, but about learning to see the world more clearly, more completely, with greater appreciation for its depth and beauty and mystery. If you like this video and feel it's speaking to something deep in your experience, please take a moment to hit the like button. Your engagement helps ensure that this kind of content reaches people who need to hear it, people who are searching for ways to reconnect with the sacred dimension of their lives. Sharing knowledge about the sacred is itself a sacred act, a way of ensuring that the wisdom our ancestors understood doesn't disappear entirely in our rush toward technological advancement and material progress. As we begin to bring this exploration to a close, I want to return to where we started, that feeling of emptiness and disconnection that so many of us carry in our daily lives. What if that emptiness isn't a sign that something is wrong with you, but rather a sign that something is calling you toward a deeper and more meaningful way of living? What if that restless dissatisfaction with purely material pleasures and achievements isn't evidence that you need more stuff or better circumstances, but evidence that your soul is hungry for genuine encounter with the sacred. What if the very pain of feeling disconnected from meaning is itself a kind of hierophany, a manifestation of the sacred breaking through in the form of longing, calling you back to awareness of dimensions of reality you've been taught to ignore? Eliade would suggest that your spiritual hunger isn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be honored, a reminder that you are more than just a biological machine processing inputs and generating outputs. You are a being capable of perceiving meaning, of experiencing transcendence, of recognizing the sacred when it manifests in your life. And once you begin to cultivate this capacity, once you start paying attention to hierophany as a real and recurring feature of your experience, you'll discover that the world you thought was empty and meaningless has been full of sacred presence all along. You just needed to remember how to see it. This remembering doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without effort. Like any skill worth developing, the capacity to perceive hierophany requires practice, patience, and persistence. But unlike many skills that modern life demands of us, this is a practice that feeds your soul rather than draining it, that connects you to what matters most, rather than distracting you from it, that opens you to wonder and gratitude and love, rather than closing you off in cynicism and despair. And the more you practice this kind of attention, the more you'll discover that hierophany isn't something that happens occasionally in special moments, but something that's available in every moment if you have the eyes to see and the heart to receive what's being offered. So let me offer you a challenge, or perhaps better to call it an invitation. For the next week, practice looking for hierophany in your daily life, not in some forced or artificial way, but with genuine curiosity and openness. Notice when something catches your attention in a way that feels different from ordinary noticing. Pay attention to moments when you feel connected to something larger than yourself. Observe the times when the world around you seems to pulse with presence or meaning beyond what you can easily explain. Don't worry about whether these experiences fit into any particular philosophical or religious framework. Just notice them, appreciate them, and allow them to be what they are, manifestations of the sacred breaking through into your ordinary world and inviting you into a deeper relationship with reality. And remember, recognizing hierophany isn't about becoming someone different from who you are now. It's about becoming more fully who you've always been, underneath all the conditioning and expectations and distractions that have accumulated over the years. It's about returning to that part of yourself that knew, perhaps as a child, that the world is alive with mystery and meaning, that every moment holds the potential for encounter with something greater than what appears on the surface. That knowledge hasn't disappeared. It's just been covered over by layers of cynicism and materialism and busyness that have convinced you that such experiences are childish or naive, or somehow less real than your bank account or your job title or your social media presence. But what if the opposite is true? What if your capacity to perceive hierophany is the most real and important thing about you? What if learning to live in conscious relationship with the sacred breaking through in your daily life is the key to the meaning and purpose and joy you've been seeking? What if the world has been trying to show you its sacred dimension all along, and you've just needed someone to remind you how to pay attention? If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognizes that there's a different path, a deeper way to understand your own spiritual journey. I know what it's like to feel lost amid so much noise of the modern world, seeking answers that always seem to slip through your fingers. That's why I created this space, this refuge where we can explore together the ancient wisdom that still pulses alive in our hearts. When you subscribe to this channel, you're not just clicking a button, you're joining a community of people who, like you, feel that life has deeper layers waiting to be discovered. Here you'll find not just knowledge, but genuine embrace for your thirst for meaning. Subscribe now and be part of this journey of rediscovering the sacred in everyday life. Your soul deserves this gift. The great gift that Mircea Eliade offers to our time is the understanding that we don't have to choose between ancient wisdom and modern knowledge, between spiritual sensitivity and rational thinking, between the sacred and the everyday. What we need to rediscover is the art of living in the space where all these apparent opposites meet and interpenetrate, where hierophany bridges the gap between heaven and earth, between the infinite and the particular, between the eternal and the temporal. This is the real meaning of being human in the fullest sense, not just to exist, but to exist in conscious relationship with the sacred dimensions of reality that surround us and permeate us, and call us toward our deepest potential for love and wisdom and creative expression. So as you go forward from this moment, Carry with you the understanding that you are surrounded by hierophany, that every day offers countless opportunities for encounter with the sacred, and that your life can become an ongoing practice of recognizing and receiving these manifestations of the divine breaking through into the world of time and space. This isn't about escaping from ordinary life, but about discovering the extraordinary that's hidden within the ordinary, waiting for the right quality of attention to reveal its presence. And once you begin to see the world this way, once you start living in conscious relationship with hierophany, you'll understand why your reality will never be the same again.